Some of the world's best writers in Tucson for the Festival of Books.
The moment I realized that there was a person hiding behind the words, I wanted to be the person putting the words on the pages.
A two-day event promoting literacy for all age groups.
Since when I went through high school and even through grammar school, I was trying to be invisible. I didn't want to get seen or heard.
This is Arizona Week. The Tucson Festival of Books celebrates its 7th year this weekend, bringing together authors from all over the world. Among them is J.A. Jance, a New York Times best-selling author who was raised in Bisbee, Arizona.
I submitted my first manuscript, Until Proven Guilty, the first Beaumont book, to my agent. She knew it was a police procedural written in the first person through a male point of view, and I gave her a manuscript that said, Until Proven Guilty by Judith A. Jance on the title page. She rewrote the title page to say, Until Proven Guilty by J.A. Jance. The second editor who saw it called her up and said, boy, the guy who wrote Until Proven Guilty is a good writer. And she said, well, what would you say if I told you the guy who wrote Until Proven Guilty was a woman? He said, I'd say she was a hell of a good writer. So he bought the manuscript. And then as it went through the marketing process, the marketing people said, wait a minute, this is a police procedural, first person, male protagonist, written by somebody named Judy. No, not gonna work. We need to use your initials. Well, I was from Bisbee, Arizona. I was being published by a New York publisher. I didn't care if they wanted to use my initials. And so that's how I became J.A. Jance. All these books later, I am so incredibly grateful because when you sign books, autographing J.A. Jance is a lot easier than Judith Ann.
Let's go back to that little girl in Bisbee who made the decision then, I want to be a bookworm. How did it all start for you?
It started in 2nd grade. I had a choice between going into Mrs. Barker's class or going into Mrs. Spangler's class. And the gods smiled at me, and off I went to Mrs. Spangler's. Under the windows in her classroom were shelves that were loaded with books that you could read if you finished your work early. And it was in Mrs. Spangler's room that I encountered the Wizard of Oz books, not just the one with Dorothy that we all know, but the other books as well. A lot of kids encountering the Wizard of Oz are fascinated by the magician behind the green curtain. I was fascinated by Frank Baum behind the words. And the moment I realized that there was a person hiding behind the words, I wanted to be the person putting the words on the pages.
Fast forward, you go to college, University of Arizona, and...
Bear down.
And you're a woman, and someone says something to the effect of that to you.
Well, I worked in the English department. I worked my way through college, working 15 hours a week in the English department office. And when I was a junior, I wanted to enroll in the creative writing class. And I spoke to the professor and he said, you're a girl. And I said, so? He said, girls become teachers or nurses, boys become writers. And he wouldn't let me into his class. So on the one hand, I did become a teacher and then I became a librarian. And I was really disappointed. But on the other hand, years later, I realized that if I had been allowed admission into a class where the professor fully expected me to fail, I might have lost the whole dream of becoming a writer. And so I'm really grateful now that I didn't get into that class. And one of the wonderful things about being a mystery writer is you have a lot of ammunition. And it's no accident that the crazed killer in my first hardback, Hour the Hunter, turned out to be a former professor of creative writing from the University of Arizona.
As an Arizona girl, one of your series is based off of Sheriff Joanna Brady down in Cochise County. Do you ever stop to think, this is where I grew up, and these are the people that I'm impacting with the stories of this community, Southern Arizona?
When I first started writing, I was living in Seattle. I had lived there less than 2 years when I started writing about J.P. Beaumont, who is a Seattle native. I had to do a lot of research to make that long-term Seattle existence come to life. Then 9 books in, when I got really tired of him, my editor suggested that I come up with another character that I could alternate Beaumont with. And I thought, okay, I know southeastern Arizona. How about if I write something there? I'm tired of writing books in the first person through a male point of view. I'm a woman. How about if I use a female main character? I spent 10 years in the life insurance business, so I know a lot about being a woman in a non-traditional job. So that's how Joanna Brady came into existence. The people watching on TV don't know this, because when I'm sitting down, they can't tell that I'm over 6 feet tall. I was 6 feet tall in the 7th grade. So I've always wondered what it would be like to be short. So that's why Joanna is 5'4". When I write a Joanna Brady book, I'm forced to look at the world through her point of view. And so I know stuff about Joanna Brady's, the top of her refrigerator, that Joanna Brady will never, never know.
We'll have more from J.A. Jantz later in the program, but now for an interview with Marcy Euler, the executive director of the Tucson Festival of Books. Every year the festival has grown. Last year, more than 100,000 people attended the 2-day festival on the University of Arizona campus.
This year we have a number of authors who are coming in who we've not seen here before. Mitch Albom, who is actually a journalist, a sports journalist with the Detroit Free Press, and also a writer. Joyce Carol Oates, Gail Sheehy, Amy Tan. Those are all folks who've not been here previously. Dave Barry, the humorist from the Miami Herald. We also have a number of children's authors who are coming who have not been with us before. Catherine Patterson, who wrote Bridge to Terabithia, which is something that a lot of teenagers and young adults have read, and it was made into a movie. And so she's coming for the first time, and we're very excited about that. We also have a lot of returners, like J.A. Jantz, one of our local favorites, Luis Uria, Adam Rex and Chris Gall, who are both local children's illustrators. So the list of authors is truly phenomenal.
At the heart of all this is literacy and
Absolutely.
promoting the efforts throughout Southern Arizona and beyond. Tell me a little bit about how that's really grown.
Part of the mission is that we maintain the festival as a free event, and that we take all proceeds after we're done from our sponsorships and exhibitor fees, etc., and turn them back into the community and help fund literacy organizations. So since 2009, our first 6 years, we've been able to donate over $1 million back to the organizations that we support. And so we're hopeful that this year we're able to give a sizable check to those 3 partners. They are Reading Seed, Literacy Connects, and U of A Literacy Outreach Programs.
And those programs don't just work with children, they work with adults.
Absolutely. So Literacy Connects has a number of programs for adults who need support in improving their reading or literacy skills so that they can improve their job prospects or finish high school, finish a GED, or go to college. All of those things are critically important, and we know that education and literacy are 2 important factors in driving the economic engine within a community. The more well-educated students are, the more likely they are to go on to post-secondary education, get better jobs, have careers that give them higher paying jobs, and then they're better able to contribute to the tax base. So when we have poor literacy rates or poor educational attainment, it affects the community in a very negative way, not maybe just right at the moment, but certainly down the road when we have to spend more on social services or other kinds of programs that are a drain on the economy instead of a boost to it.
This is a huge event. How do you see it growing in the years ahead when it's already accomplished so much growth?
Well, I think that that's one of the things that our board is challenged with. We need to not be stagnant. Being stagnant means we're actually not looking at opportunities. And so they are going to be really looking at how do we mindfully grow? How do we strategically plan for the next big thing that is coming up hopefully in 2016. And we might not even know what that is right now. This year we've added a couple of things, including having a partnership with the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences here at the university and The Nation magazine. So they are bringing in some authors, including Noam Chomsky and some other folks who are really national figures in the conversations around politics, and they want to continue to be involved. And so we need to figure out how to do that in a way that helps us meet our goals and our vision and maintain our ability to keep the festival free of charge and be able to contribute back to our literacy groups.
Literacy is at the heart of the Festival of Books. It's estimated more than 30 million adults in the U.S. struggle with basic literacy skills. Many of these adults keep that fact that they can't read or write a secret from family and friends. Arizona Public Media's Sandra Westall has the journey of Uwe Keilitz, who spent decades hiding before turning his life around.
I started working in adult literacy here in Tucson, 12 years ago. And there's more awareness now than there was then. But it's still, I don't think, a real commonly understood issue.
Betty Stauffer at Literacy Connect says that the majority of adults who reach out to the nonprofit struggle with basic reading skills.
Unfortunately, adult literacy is a major problem here in the United States, and particularly here in Arizona and Pima County. We have adults who come through our doors all the time who are high school graduates, but they can barely read. So education level doesn't necessarily equate to literacy level.
Many of these adults find creative ways to get by without showing others their inability to read.
One of our adult learners has said, and he'll say this to anybody he talks to, you know people who can't read. You just don't know they can't read because they hide it so well.
It was hard keeping that secret. When they tell you to fill something out and you can't do it, I had to wait until I got home so my parents could help me with it.
Uwe Keilitz graduated from high school, but he didn't know how to read or write.
I was living with my parents back in New Jersey. They were reading English, but not that good. It was mostly just German.
Uwe kept his lack of literacy a secret from co-workers at a Tucson machine shop where he did finishing work for many years. He even managed to keep it a secret from friends for more than 3 decades.
About 4 years ago, I got laid off from my company. I said, okay, I'm gonna be in trouble. For your job applications, you need to fill out your name, your address, and you had to put down how many people you knew, and I couldn't read half of the stuff that was on there. I knew the name and the addresses. I used to have copies of applications that I take with me, and I would kind of, oh, that's the same as this. Okay, so I can write this in there. And that's when I said, no more. Couldn't do it anymore. And plus my parents passing away, I needed to learn how to read. I was really nervous when I walked through there the first time. Walking through those doors, and I thought, okay, let's see what happens.
I'm always in awe of the people who come to us and what they've done in their lives and what they've had to do in their lives. In our society, there's not a stigma to, oh, I can't draw, or, oh, I'm not a math person. There's not a stigma to that. There is a stigma to, what do you mean you can't read?
And so while you're talking, you're saying all that, I'm thinking too that...
Edie Leppert meets many adult students who are native English speakers. She remembers Uwe when he started the program 5 years ago.
It was a really small group. I think we started with 5 or 7 students, and He was very, very quiet. And then the further the class went, the more he participated, got really engaged in the book, and I could definitely see that he was on his way to becoming a reader, and that book changed everything for him.
Leaves. The classmates on Tuesday began after breakfast. The subject was the meaning of life. It was tiring for me to explain. This book represents that this is how I started. This is my first book that I've ever read. Since, when I turned 53, I never read a book. It's just changed my world completely. Completely changed me. Good. I know you do. You guys are, yeah. I've been doing different things for different people already. I already read part of it, so I was fine with it.
Oh, you did pre-read it.
I did pre-read a little bit. As he was reading, I was following along.
There was another student here that Uwe was concerned wasn't reading enough. And he said, I'm going to make you read more. I'm going to start a book club, and you're going to be in it.
It varies. It varies. Some people come in and they stay for a little bit, and then they leave again. Some people come back. But this little group of ours has been, we're here every Monday.
It's not a fast process. Adult education, especially adult literacy, this is not something that you're going to see substantial change in literacy levels in a year, depending on their background and what they've been through. And it's going to be 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. I think we have a lot of adults who have been hiding, have been living invisible lives and voiceless lives, and have so much that they can offer us and so much they can do for our community and our society. But they need that chance, and they need a safe place and people that understand them.
For 58-year-old Uwe, knowing how to read has become such an important part of life that he recently started volunteering as a tutor for a group of ESL students.
Why don't you just write, if you want to write about that. It hasn't sunk it in yet that I'm actually doing this. I'm actually being a tutor. And it's just been so great just to watch them learning and watch them getting their confidence up. And I have a connection with them. So I know what they're going through if they're sitting there like this. Okay, he's nervous. Come on, you can get over this. You don't have to be nervous. That's good. I've been there. So that's what I tell them. I've been catching up to things that I always wanted to do, but I couldn't do them. Like try to learn to play my guitar or read a lot of books. It's like opening doors. And, wow, I just want more of this.
And now for more from author J.A. Jantz. Just this week, she published another book and figures she's typed somewhere around 6 million words in the last 30 years. There are Jantz junkies all over this country waiting for the next Brady novel, Walker, Allie Reynolds, and then, of course, the Beaumont series. They may be wondering what's next for you. I mean, are you going to continue to fuel our interest in your writing?
In our household, I write the books, Bill writes the checks. And because he can write checks very fast, I will continue writing into the foreseeable future. I expect that someday they will drag my gnarled hands off my keyboard, and when they do that, that will be the end. I do not have books stored up to be published posthumously, and I do not have a cadre of co-writers to help me over the tough spots in plotting or writing. But it's still the job I always wanted to do. And it's better than I could possibly have dreamed, because Bisbee, Arizona didn't allow for an understanding of what my life would be like now.
What do you say to those women out there who just idolize you and see you as their inspiration? The women who are like yourself, a wife, a mom, and wondering, can I do this? I want to do it, but can I? Is there time?
When I bought my first computer in 1983, it was a dual floppy Eagle with 128K of memory. I also bought a daisy wheel printer at the same time. my first husband died, I was left with a $50,000 death benefit from life insurance after he died. And I invested $5,000 of that 50, 10% of it, in my future as a writer. And when the guy came to the house to install the computer, he fixed it so that when I booted it up every morning, the words that flashed across the screen were these: a writer is someone who has written today. And today, I'm not a writer because I finished writing that book yesterday. And today, I'm reading somebody else's book. Today, I am answering emails, but writers write. And the poetry that I wrote when I was living on the reservation, when I was married to my first husband, who said there was only going to be one writer in our family, and he was it. Telling me I couldn't write was taking away the air I breathed. And so I wrote those poems in the dark of night when he was passed out cold in his recliner. And the amazing thing is those poems are still available in my book of poetry, After the Fire. And the title poem, I wrote those poems thinking that I was being true to my art. I didn't realize that I was actually grappling, using words to grapple with the essential conflicts of my life. But the title poem of After the Fire goes like this: I have touched the fire. It burned me, but I knew I lived. It seared me, but it made me whole. He called me. I went gladly, though I saw the rocks, fell laughing through the singeing air. I have known the fire. I'll live with nothing rather than with less. The flame is out. There's nothing left but ash.
You're approaching maybe nearly 60 books.
I am. Who's counting? But yes, I am. I started writing in the middle of March of 1982. So it's over 30 years later. I was being interviewed by someone a number of years ago, and she said, well, how old were you when you published your first book? And I said, well, I was 41 when my first book was published in 1985. She said, oh, you were so old. I wonder how old you think I am now.
Political news now in the buzz with my colleague Christopher Conover. Christopher, a couple big interviews for you this week. We'll start first, though, with Republican Representative Martha McSally in Tucson.
She was down here touring Raytheon missiles, where they make the Maverick missile, which she said she's probably the only member of Congress to ever go there and say, I've fired that weapon, as well as the Tomahawk. She was holding a town hall, talking a lot of defense and national foreign policy with them. Of course, the letter from the 46 senators, including Senator McCain, to the open letter to the Iranian government came up. I asked her if that letter in any way undermines negotiators. Let's take a look at her answer.
I think it is important that Congress has a role in oversight, and if it were actually to be something that was treaty-like, the Senate is supposed to be ratifying that.
And to be clear, McSally does not like most Republicans, where those negotiations are going right now.
Okay. Other big news this week, Governor Ducey also in Tucson, touring a couple different places, and you managed to catch him on the U of A campus.
He did. He came down to Tucson and met with some business leaders and some local businesses, then came onto the University of Arizona campus to tour the Mirror Lab, where they make mirrors for big telescopes. Of course, budget was the big discussion when he met with members of the media here on campus. The University of Arizona losing $30 million of the $99 million going to all the state universities in the cuts. And there has been criticism of the governor that this budget was almost snuck through and went through very, very quickly. This version was unveiled on Wednesday, the legislative version, voted on Saturday morning. He's not buying the criticism, though.
Now, they actually deliberated throughout the night, though. Isn't that correct, that they made the decision at 6 o'clock Saturday morning?
They did. They started late Friday night on the floor session and went all night long, Democrats trying to get amendments put in, Republicans trying to get amendments put in, Republican leadership doing the proverbial arm twisting to get the votes they needed, and they got just barely the votes they needed.
And he's proud to say that it was a bipartisan effort, if you would explain that.
The governor says it's a bipartisan effort. One Democrat voted for the budget and got a lot for it. He represents the Navajo Nation and got a lot of money for the Navajo Nation. He's now in big trouble with a lot of the rank and file Democrats. They feel like they've been sold out. However, if you want to call that bipartisan, you need to look at the vote against the budget. 4 Republicans voted against the budget, and 2 others walked off the floor and refused to vote. So it's bipartisan officially. More than one party voted for it, but it's being seen as some as spin. The Republic wrote an editorial about it that said to the governor, basically, stop spinning and just be straight up.
Okay, and you asked the governor specifically about that timetable, and let's listen in now.
We released that budget on January 16th, so it really had been out in the light of day for over 7 weeks. There was no one that provided an alternative plan, although we did get a lot of criticism. Once we had the votes and we had done the discussions and we had made certain that we had protected public safety and child safety and K-12 education, we made final decisions and we voted.
Again, the budget the governor is talking about that's been out for a while was his budget. The legislative budget, the one that got voted on, was released just 2 or 3 days before the vote. Now, it should be pointed out that was part of the governor's budget. He and leaders, Republican leaders, negotiated that budget package going forward.
Pretty controversial given the devil in the details there. So did everybody really get what they wanted, or did most people end up saying, well, we've just got to approve something in time?
What we're hearing is, especially from Republicans, there are a lot of Republicans who voted for it, said this is the best we could do. This is a short-term fix. Longer term, we'll get money back to higher education. Democrats say, no, you could have done better. Typical what you would expect to hear.
All right, Christopher Conover with The Buzz, the political news of the week. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Bridell.